Clemson is currently 5-5, and the Sharks are smelling blood. We'll talk about it right here on Locked On Clemson.
You are Locked On Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Tiger fans? Morgan Thomas here, Clemson fan, Clemson grad, host and producer of Locked On Clemson, part-time host and producer over on 105.5 FM The Roar. Thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen of the day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network, and that is because of people like you, listeners and viewers like you, the everydayers. Big salute out there to you. You know how we do it here. Exclusive Clemson content Monday through Friday, every single week. And don't forget, if you're new to the show, maybe you're not yet subscribed. About 70% of you are not yet, but I'm sure you will love it. I guarantee it. So listen to this show. And if you want to be a part of this exclusive content, then hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. We have a great show and a lot to get to. We're going to be in segment 3 today, talking about the jumbo package and the identity that makes it smart or dumb. And then before that, we'll get into Dabo Swinney's portal philosophy and his strategy and how it could frustrate us. But before we get into any of those two things, let's start with the Sharks. The Sharks are circling, and should this put Clemson into a panic? I don't believe it should. Clemson's young core is guys that you really want to be a part of this team, and it's giving a lot of the fan base optimism for the future if they can keep them intact. And that is the big if that we're going to be talking about here in segment 1, because a 5-5 season where you've really struggled to get a significant amount of ACC wins. You've struggled to get wins at home, and you really have lost your identity on both sides of the ball in many ways. 5-5, it's not just that the players who want to stay around, but maybe there's some players on the fence. Maybe there's some players that jump the fence. What if it's that core group of young players that you want to keep around? You know, college football today makes it easier than ever for freshmen, redshirt freshmen, sophomore, redshirt sophomore to leave at the first sign of frustration. Now, you may not be frustrated if you're winning 9-10 games and you're not getting a lot of snaps. You're just waiting your time. But if you're losing 5 games, winning 5 games, barely making it to a bowl game, and you're not getting a lot of snaps, then you kind of start to think, well, maybe there could be someplace better for me than staying here. Clemson is no different than any other school that has to deal with this. They're going to have to deal with possibly a tumultuous offseason. Now, Dabo has touted that he's had the best retention and the best graduation rates, and that is all true. But that was also while consistently winning games as well and being one of the better teams in the country. Clemson's not even in the conversation of even the top 25 teams in the country. They're not even in the conversation as one of those also receiving votes but not yet ranked teams. So college football today is all about what have you done for me lately and what can you do for me that the other school could not do, whether it's more money or more playing time. And this could be the offseason that really shows whether or not the players on the team are actually committed and all in, as Dabo Swinney likes to say, because you just never know. You never know what a player is really thinking unless, you know, they really just straight up tell you. But a lot of times in these scenarios, frustrations can be kind of silent. You know, and they could be from outside, not just internally, but they could be from the family, from extended family, from other teams out there, from former position coaches or recruiters that talk to them, or even an agent nowadays, it's so much worse than professional, because there's no contracts involved, and at least no long-term contracts. And these guys can basically jump around and do whatever they want. The player has all the power. I look forward to a day in the future where, it's more like professional, at least with, if you're committed and you are receiving some sort of benefit package, then you just can't stop playing and move on. Now, I'm not saying Clemson players would do that. We have seen so far that the Clemson core talented players are sticking with the team, are fighting their way through. But there's a lot of question marks out there. Will TJ Moore, who obviously doesn't seem to get a lot of looks from Cade, even though when he does get the looks, he's been able to make some good plays. Cade's guy is Antonio Williams, and the rest of the guys are just there, and unfortunately for Cade and for the offense, that hinders a lot of their success. Now, before Cade and had Antonio, it was Bryant Wesco as well, and they had a good chemistry there. But where does that leave TJ Moore? What's he going to want to do even when Cade is gone? Has he been frustrated? I know that his family and his mom's on social media, and she loves Clemson. And she said she would love Clemson no matter where TJ went. But the fan base wants TJ Moore. He is a good wide receiver. They want to see more TJ Moore, and they want to see him finish his season and career at Clemson ultimately. And he has a lot left in the tank and a lot of years left. So him with Bryant Wesco, those are two guys that Wesco's now injured, not playing. Is he sitting back and looking at this team and thinking, maybe there's some better opportunities for me? And what is going to happen to me and my production when there's this big, huge question mark at quarterback? I mean, look at what happened this year, and there was not a question mark at quarterback. Not just those guys, but like Tyler Brown, he's all but disappeared this season. Sammy Brown has been a statistical leader on the team, but you don't want to be the best player amongst a bunch of guys who can't figure it out. And in a lot of this year on the defensive side of the ball, that's what happened. It was Sammy Brown, and everybody else kind of was lost, it seemed, and not holding up their own end of the bargain. Christian Bentancur had a little bit of a run of some success in the red zone. Then they've forgotten about him again. Brookings, Dabo Swinney talks about him, but we have not seen him. Gideon Davidson, was the true, pure running back, one of the best in the country as a recruit. And basically, if they're not forgetting about the running game, they're using it very limited and focusing a lot on Adam Randall. But Adam Randall has earned that too because of his statistical success. These aren't depth players that I'm talking about. These are young core players that you need to build the future identity of Clemson football. Now, none of these guys are saying that they're leaving, and I'm not saying that they're leaving at all. But this is the worst season in over 2 decades, right? Or like right under 2 decades. No chance for anything ACC related, no chance for anything playoff related. And really, what kind of bowl game are you going to get at this point? This is the exact kind of recipe that not just players want to leave, but other rival coaches want to get in and tamper. Even if they don't do it directly, you got to believe that there are a lot of people out there ready, or if not already, saying maybe the grass is greener on our side. Now, Dabo came out this week and said that he feels like a lot of the core guys on the team love Clemson. They came to Clemson for the right reasons, and that, that he feels like he has a lot of trust there. Clemson hasn't been put in a position like this in such a long time that we don't really know what's going to happen. But we can admit that the team does seem like they're still fighting through, and it seems as if those core younger players are bought in, at least what you see on Saturdays. I believe that the culture at Clemson and the guys that wanted to come to Clemson do still matter, and it will still hold the glue together, or be the glue that holds them together. But in this nature of college football, There's a lot of backstabbing and underhanded work that's going on behind the scenes that nobody ever talks about. And so you just never know. They're going to open up some wounds here with this 5-5 disappointing season. And you just never know what is going to resonate with a player on the team. Now, my hope is that these young core players stick with it, fight through it, and that everyone will stay committed. But you just still never know with a season like this. All right, segment 2, we're going to roll into Dabo Swinney's portal philosophy. A lot of controversy there, which there always is, right here on Locked On Clemson. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. If you missed the start of the game or missed the start of the season and you want to ride a hot hand or want to find a hot hand to ride, go over to FanDuel. They have live bets from everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets with same game parlays for a shot at a bigger payout. And it keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Now, I admittedly am not a huge NBA fan, but I got to tell you, when you look out and see the opportunities that are out there, you can go to research, fanduel.com/research, see what options are out there to make more plays on FanDuel. So right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head over to FanDuel.com, sign up, play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Hey, segment number 2 here. Thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Dabo finally showed some flexibility last season, bringing in a few transfers. And by a few, I literally mean 3. But the fan base and myself is wanting to see a real true sense of urgency from this team. The offseason will show, again, not only how loyal these players are, but also how well Clemson adapts. Or will we be in another repeat for a 2025 season in 2026? And nobody wants to repeat 2025 again. Dabo also said that he really is not interested in overpaying freshmen and that he would rather invest in more proven players from possibly the transfer portal and that talent market than get into some sort of bidding war for someone who's never played a snap of college football. And I mean, can any one of us really blame him in that scenario? It seems as if there are a lot of players who don't really deserve to be in those type of bidding wars because they have no proof of any kind of success at the college level. Now, there are a select few always out there that are kind of the elite of the elite that could be, your Trevor Lawrences of the world. But I don't think that's what Dabo is really talking about here. These players that have been in these bidding wars, when you look at it, as I talked about on the radio, it's very hard because you have so many schools to compete with. You're not just competing with 35 teams or 32 teams like you are in the NFL. It's like the NFL, or imagine Major League Baseball, not just competing with 30, what do they have? 31, 32? But the 30 teams or so in the NFL or the Major League Baseball, also competing with all the teams in AAA. That's what really gets a big concern to me, is that you just have so many teams. There's 30 something college football teams. If you do everything you can to fight off every single ACC team, who's to say there's not a Big Ten team? Who's to say there's not a SoCon team or something like that? Who's to say there's not some Big 12 team or American team or whatever other conference that's out there, whatever other school? Hey, maybe you beat out Georgia, you beat out North Carolina, you beat out Wake Forest, you beat out South Carolina, but then, Central Florida throws 50 grand more to the player. What are you going to do? You can't. It's very hard to outbid literally everyone. There could be other teams that are fighting for certain things and run out of money. But when you have so many other competitors out there, it's very hard to fight off everyone. And there are schools out there that are going to throw big money. And that's what I worry about with Clemson, is that they're not a major market school. They don't have all the great donors out there that they can just throw out money whenever they want. And I don't see a future unless they get rid of NIL. I would love for them to get rid of NIL and just manage it in a different way. The way that they're doing or the proposing is better, but a lot of it still is the fan bases are just dumping a lot of money, or big donors are dumping a lot of money into players, whether they're proven or not. They have, over the past 2 cycles, more than or right at 2 handfuls of decommitted players. And it seems as if even with this bad season, they're getting more decommitted players. And it's not all NIL related, but it is also performance on the field, and that's really where Clemson is right now. Even though they have a really good culture, even though that Dabo believes in development and leadership and on and off the field, and he's never really been a guy who's chased the number 1 recruiting class. Clemson has won national championships without that, but they're losing them because not only the money game, but also some of that refusal to admit that their current players aren't as good as they really are. And also there's a concern that the product that you're seeing out on the field is reflective of the future. At some point, Clemson has to figure out what they're going to do. This is probably the worst season of all for Dabo Swinney to prove that he can actually turn things around, because you've got a high-paid offensive coordinator that really doesn't seem like he knows how to keep his identity on offense. You have a high-paid defensive coordinator that seems to be running a defense that's not fitting the players he has on the field. And you have a lot of guys that you were really loyal to that just haven't been playing at a high level. Is it because Clemson has been too choosy and maybe too loyal with certain players? Yeah, I think so in some ways, but they're also losing the race with the other teams in the ACC and the SEC because they're just playing 2 different acquisition games. At some point, Dabo's got to say, hey, you know what? And I will say this, I've said this in the past. I think that you look at one of the reasons why Clemson has been able to retain so many players. Well, Morgan, they don't lose a lot of players, so they can't go and get a lot of players. I think a lot of it is because Dabo has been too quick to give away the money to players that already are wearing the jersey. If you give away all your money or your first fruits or everything or your majority of your high percentage to the current players, well, you're just going to get what you've already gotten, and they're not going to get that much better because you don't have an infusion of new talent. If you then say, well, the small percentage that we have left over, we'll give it to freshmen. Well, those guys a lot of times are not ready by any means, and maybe not even deserving because they haven't played any snaps. So you go and add a little bit to the transfer portal, but not enough. If you think about it, statistically, we looked at this together maybe a couple of weeks ago, a couple months ago. After the past 3 years, looking back, teams that did 5 to 15 transfer portal players were more consistently more successful than teams that did 5 or less. Teams that did 15 to 25 were not very good statistically. And then teams that did over 25, actually, surprisingly enough, you either had great or busts. You either had Ole Miss or Florida State. So you really don't know. It's a crapshoot. If you do a lot, it's just a complete revamp and you just don't know what you're going to get. But if you have a healthy amount of, 10 to 15, that's enough to replenish some of your depth, to fill in some of your gaps, and maybe even land an impact player immediately that you wouldn't get as a true freshman. It's not about abandoning Clemson's principles. It's all about modernizing how you handle roster management so that you don't fall further behind your competitors in your own conference. It's one thing Clemson not be able to hang with Georgia of the world, but it's a completely different level of disappointment when they can't hang with Duke, when they can't hang with Syracuse or Georgia Tech. That is unacceptable, and things have to change. And it's not so much about philosophy and values and principles, but it is a lot about the strategy with how they're acquiring new players. All right, hey, we're going to jump into segment 3 here on Locked On Clemson. The jumbo package, smart or failed experiment? We'll talk about it right here on Locked On Clemson. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, they're just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually, getting tickets can feel more like a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices. No surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up Game Time, took a couple of taps, and I noticed a lot of great deals for the Furman game this weekend. Go check it out over on the Game Time app. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Fans love Peter Woods. Coaches love Peter Woods. The jumbo package has had its moments, but it nearly cost Clemson the game against Louisville, and it's been kind of a frustration and turned into more of a solid answer and into more of a gimmick. You know, the jumbo package is when they bring out a lot of offensive linemen and they put at the fullback, defensive tackle, or even a tailback of Peter Woods. Now, Peter Woods is extremely athletic for a type of body shape that he is type of person he is, and he is a great all-around football player. But it's worked at times and it's not worked at times. Cade Klubnik, you remember, you would see him under center. He's not used to being under center because he plays from the shotgun a lot. But it's really a power run with your biggest, most athletic defender that you have on the team, and it just happens to be a defensive tackle. It's simple. It's fun. And having a dude like that in the backfield to be in the fridge package or whichever they want to call it is really kind of, gets the fans into it. It worked early, 8 carries, 2 touchdowns, 4 conversions. So successful out of all but 2. And so they had 2 failures before Louisville. And then in Louisville, they had more of the failures. Peter Woods fumbled, trying to stretch it over the goal line. Cade had what we call as but even before all of that, they had a 3rd and goal situation. In the first situation, they had 3rd and goal. Peter Woods goes in and tries to stretch it out and fumbles it. And then in the 4th and goal situation, Cade did hero ball Cade and decided to make up something backyard style that was not called and was not expected by anybody but him, and tried to hand the ball off by doing this ballerina type twist to Woods, who wasn't ready for it. And the play was supposed to go to Adam Randall, and they fumbled it and was not able to score. It's not, in that scenario, a scheme problem, but it all goes back around, can you really be the best offensive coordinator possible when you have a quarterback like Cade Klubnik? And I will say this, I agree with a lot of people who talked about this on the radio. They didn't necessarily have to even give Cade Klubnik that option. Why do you keep doing the jumbo package when the gimmicky stuff's not working? Just go back to the stuff that was working, which was that more traditional run game. I do believe that makes a lot of sense for me too. It does seem that Garrett Riley gets cutesy at times. And It's unnecessary. But a lot of coordinators do the same. I don't think it's a scheme problem. I don't think it's that they did the play technically twice problem. But when you can't trust a quarterback to execute those plays, then it just makes it look that much worse. At the end of the day, though, I kind of go back to the whole flea flicker problem where they do it multiple. They've done that multiple times. They do this multiple times. It goes back to the fact that the team is just not very good. Garrett Riley has not shown that they know what their identity is or has been able to establish much of an identity in the red zone for sure. There's been times where against Duke, for example, they got into the red zone and never once even thought about throwing the ball into the end zone. Was it Cade or was it Garrett Riley? That's a big question mark for me because a lot of times I think it's Garrett Riley's problem. But then when I go back and watch it for a second time, I'm like, you know what? Cade's not even giving anything time to develop. He's throwing underneath almost instantly. So what can you really do as an offensive coordinator when you're calling these plays and your quarterback is not running them properly, not executing them properly? I like the package. I like that it's a little bit of an identity, a little bit of a purposeful game plan or scheme, play call, if you will, but you can't let it become extremely predictable, and you can't let your quarterback be, start to do things where he is unpredictable. So you don't want the play to be predictable, and you don't want your player to be unpredictable. They need to get better at executing, and they've really, at this point, I know you're probably going to laugh when I say this, but even the things that seem like they will work on paper, you just never know because the players out there are struggling to execute. And you're not going to get much more out of them. This is who they are. They're just not that great of a football team altogether. And it's been the theme the whole season. So do I hate the jumbo package? Let me clarify and say, no, I don't hate the jumbo package. Do I want to see it back to back where Cade Klubnik can't execute? Definitely not. I don't want to see that either. Would I like to see more doing what is traditional, but in a shorter yardage situation? There has to be better ideas than just that. And if not, why is he making all this money? Why was he such a highly sought after offensive coordinator if all he can come up with is the one jumbo package, to get an extra yard? To me, that's where I question, like, where's his creativity? And then it goes back to, do I beat him up about it? Or is it really that he just can't trust his quarterback to be as creative as he needs him to be? Well, hey, thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen of the day. For your second listen, go check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs, Alex Dono, they break down the most interesting college conference in all of college sports. From the rivalries to the championships to every game in between, find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And as always, Tiger fans, that's it for today. We will see you tomorrow, and we will see you at the top of the hill.